working. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey folks, and welcome to Do Stuff, Make Things. Today I'm mostly just kind of like puttering. I'm going to talk a little bit about like why I'm here and what my hopes for this are and where I hope this is going to go. But I'll get to that a little bit later. Sorry, my workbench is really dirty. So I'm going to start today. I've realized that I have a lot of long extension cords in my shop. I don't have a lot of short extension cords in my shop, and my shop is small. It's about 25 by 25 or so, and it's packed to the gills. I've got about 500 pounds of wood kind of just taking up space waiting for me to get to it, which I'm hoping to get to at least start getting to later this week, but we'll see what happens and what other projects end up coming up. So I come from a theatrical live event film TV background that I worked in theaters, did lighting and rigging for dance, built scenery and props. And as a result, I end up with a lot of these cables kicking around. This was one from when I had a little lighting company that I was running. That's a stage pin cable, which is super useful in the theater, not super useful here in my shop. And then I've also got like this big old heavy duty orange extension cord that somebody knurled the ground pin and knurled the neutral, where they cut off the ground pin and they knurled the neutral blade. So I just cut the head off of it, and I've been waiting for time to do something with it. So I'm going to make a couple short extension cords. I've got a hose reel that I'm going to assemble because the way that my air hose for my pneumatic tools is set up right now is kind of a nightmare. So I got a manual hose reel ages ago and just haven't bothered to put it together, so you guys get to see me do that and deal with whatever foibles I have. And then we'll see what time it is and see what other projects I feel like getting into tonight. And I'll also talk about, like I said, why I'm here. Alright, so stage pin cables, or TPG, or 2-pin ground, is because there's a hot and neutral and a ground, just like your regular Edison cable, which is what we call your regular home extension cords. It assembles basically the same. It's just a little bit different in the interface. Not been open for a while. There we go. Alright. Oh. I also need to make a long Ethernet cord if I'm going to be out here streaming. I need to run a hard line because the Wi-Fi is not super great this far away. But somewhere I have some plugs. These are sometimes also called Bates connectors because they're one of the main manufacturers of these types of connectors anymore. There we go. So if you don't know anything about electricity, most cables are going to have 2 to 3 colors in them: black, white, green. Sometimes they'll just be black, white if you're using zip cord or lamp cord, that 2-wire stuff that goes to a table lamp. You have to go by the blades on the plug to know which one's hot and which one's neutral, because there's no difference in the cables except that one has writing on it and sometimes we'll have a tracer, like a little strip of color running down it. Sometimes it's the one with the writing, sometimes it's the one without the writing, and depending on where the stuff is made, you can't rely on which one's which. But usually it is the small blade that's hot, wide blade that's neutral. Where did I put those? Oh, and I'm stealing the adapter from this. So this was a stage pin to Edison adapter, which obviously I don't need in my shop because I'm not running a whole. I'm gonna wait and see if I need that Edison connector, because that's useful for my variacs. If you don't know what a variac is a potentiometer or a rheostat, like a dimmer on your wall in your house. It's just much bigger and can take a much higher amperage load than the ones in your house have. Sometimes we just call them manual dimmers. Alright, so yeah, I might do that. All kinds of fun, like actually, I am going to get something to put all these cast-offs in. Perfect. A bowl I haven't finished yet. So I'm snipping these crimps off because I don't need them in a regular connector. Because the way that stage pin cables work, if you just tighten those screws down, it's just going to poke through your cable. So you need something around it. In Edison cables, they don't have the need for that because they use plates inside of it. So you're probably not going to be able to see it very well. Oh yeah, you're definitely not going to be able to see it. There's a plate in each one of these, and it comes kind of pre-screwed in, which means you have to start by unscrewing them. And of course, one of the most important things, put the back of your connector on first. Otherwise, you get the whole thing wired up, and you have to stick it all apart then. This part that I'm screwing off is called the strain relief. its job is to make sure that if you decide to yank this out of the wall, that it doesn't just pull the wires out of the back of it, out of the back of the connector, and mess things up and possibly cause a short or an electrical fire. So this one is really helpful for people who don't know a lot about electricity, because with your hot, neutral, and ground, copper is always hot. If you've got one that's yellow, one that's white, and then the pin at the bottom, then you know your power is coming through the yellow one, and then your power is going back. Unused power is going back to your breaker box on the white one. So just strip down. If I want to be super neurotic, okay, apparently I'm going to be super neurotic, I'm going to wire it up in the same order that I would if I was wiring up something that was plugged in, which would be starting with the ground, or something that if I don't know has juice going to it. And then wiring the neutral, because that way the power has somewhere to go if you get electrocuted. And then the hot blast. And this has a pin that you line up to. So something that like nobody ever really talks about, and you only really hear it from like old school electricians and old school theater. So when you're putting the connector together, you don't just put the connector head all the way up against the head of the plug and then tighten everything down. You get them just barely started, so you have a bit of a gap, and then you tighten your strainer. Because by doing that, you're giving a little bit extra slack inside the connector, so if the strain really fails, you have a little bit further to go before you have catastrophic failure in your cable or connector. Alright, now that's good and snug. I'll do the screws that connect it all together. That's that. Same thing, a couple more times. I'm going to turn on sleeves. Theoretically. Alright, if you hear that, let me know. If you can't, or if it's annoying or loud, let me know. But I'm going to do the same thing with the female cable now. So the only real difference between the construction of the male cable and the female cable is that the female cable needs to have more room inside of it. because you're sticking the blades into it, so it needs somewhere to contact those and then connect with the wire that's leaving it. So it's got the same basic insides that this one has here, right there. It just needs to also accommodate going into it. And I'm going to stop talking about that. So that's going to end badly. Oh, and this is a fun tool. It's an automatic cable stripper. The more traditional ones are these, which you line it up, crimp it, squiggle it on the cable, and then yank it off to get the shield off. But this does it all for you. It's faster, which means you get to watch me make less cable. Watch me take less time making cables. Okay, maybe I won't ring this out. Can't find my multimeter. No. More auction stuff. Alright, I don't know where my multimeter went, which is very strange. But we will keep going, and I just won't ring these out. Unless I find it later. So, these are another kind of Edison connector. Exactly the same as these. They're just less expensive because they're made from lower quality materials. It's got a metal housing which you can short to versus the plastic housing which is always going to be insulated from electrical shock. At least externally insulated. I'm really bothered by not being able to find my multimeter. There. Nope, not there. Nope. Yeah, I don't know. It's lost in the ether. If I find it, I'll test these. But this cable I know is good. All right, so this guy, because they messed with the male end of this, I'm not going to trust the female end either. So, I'm just going to get rid of that sucker. But I think I'm going to make a couple 20 footers, maybe 15. stuff right and left. There it is. So this bench is a completely useless length. 4 years. So 16, 15. 15 plus 3 inches. So I'm doing, this one's going to be 15 feet plus 3 inches because when I make cables, I like the distance between the connectors to be the actual length of the cable. A lot of the commercial extension cords that you buy are going to be from the head of the male end to the head of the female end, not the distance between, which can make a difference if you're tight on space. But I'm doing the 3 inches because I have to trim this back about an inch. So that I can get to the wires. This looks like it might actually be 12 gauge. That's cool. Yep. Alright, I'm going to use these guys. So this one's just got a different kind of strain relief, but the same principle applies. This is the same thing. It just runs a little differently. So instead of it having everything being enclosed, everything's actually kind of exposed. So before I put this together, I'm actually going to put a wrap of electrical tape around it. Even though the inside of this is insulated with plastic to make it less likely to arc, because it is metal. You see, you might be able to see there's a tiny little spring in there. That spring attaches the metal from the strain relief that's touching the housing to the ground pin. That's why there's that little plate on the back of the ground, if you can see that. Somebody took a bite out of this. That weren't me. See what happened there. Somebody did something naughty. So, something happened to this which caused all three wires to be exposed. It was probably a heat event that happened. So, somebody was probably having sparks around it or a fire around it. I don't know. Dropped their cigarette butt on it. This was a cable I got at an auction a long time ago, or a while ago. And also why it's a good idea to have a multimeter to test them. So you can see if there's anything that shorts across where it shouldn't. Shop's not that big, it has to be somewhere. Either that or I completely spaced and I put it in the car. I could just let these fly. I just don't want to be picking up little pieces of plastic from around my shop. Like I said, I'm going to put a squiffle of E-tape on this. I don't have to. Just good juju, I feel. But I want to make sure I don't cover the ground plate. Hello, industrious designer. I'm wiring cables because I don't have short electrical cables in my shop. I have a bunch of 75 footers, a couple 100 footers, but most of my regular shorter length under 50-foot cables are stage pin cables, which I talked about when I first started. The first cable I did was converting a stage pin cable over. So this is just because I need more electrical cords. Well, if you do it wrong, it's very dangerous. Um, but if you're careful, I mean, as long as you're not plugged in, it's only really dangerous once you plug it in. Also, you want to make sure that you never put two male ends on connectors. That would be really dangerous. There is no such thing in the electrical world as a male-to-male turnaround for regular plugs. What would happen? Aside from electrocuting yourself, if you plugged one end of a cable into one socket and then the same cable with another male end on it in a different socket, you would fairly effectively blow the breaker, to say the least. Higher chance you could blow the main, depending on how well it was wired up in the first place, or if it's like an old style breaker. I had to qualify the no male-to-male cables because they do exist, but for high voltage stuff. So if you're using feeder cable, which is the kind of cable that like comes into your house, so it's big cable, runs up, high voltage, touch it and die kind of cable. But sometimes they get run in different ways depending on where the cable is made. With feeder cable, there's East Coast and West Coast. East Coast, everything is straight. West Coast, it's kind of clear. I never thought about that before. So West Coast feeder cable has the ground and the neutral turned around. So if you get a cable from the West Coast, or that was made West Coast style, and you bring it to the East Coast, where all of the feeder here runs, pin to source, female or socket to what you're powering, you're going to run this loom of cable and not be able to plug in the first two things that you need to plug in, which are the neutral and ground. So you would need a turnaround for this. So in that isolated incident, you would have a male-to-male or female-to-female adapters, but those are big. I have one I can show you if you're actually interested. But the electrical infrastructure itself isn't. The way we run cables into buildings doesn't change. It's what is done once it's inside the building that changes. For house power, for stuff that you'd find in your home, apartment, tiny home, whatever, it's all going to be pretty much the same once it gets to the box. You're going to have bare end wires that go into your breaker box, that go into breakers from there, and then you run to the wires all over your place. But in the event world and the live entertainment world, or filmed entertainment world, because it applies to film as well. The West Coast, I don't remember when exactly they made that decision to differentiate from everybody else. But they decided that if it was high voltage power and it was temporary power, you needed to have a way to make sure that you couldn't plug the wrong thing into the wrong thing. And by that I mean that if you were colorblind, you couldn't plug a green for ground cable into a hot port in a power panel. So they made them turn around the neutral and the ground, because the copper in the wire doesn't care which way the electricity is flowing. And they did it with both the neutral and the ground, because some places they're old enough they don't have 5-wire. They were around when code only required you to have 4-wire if you were doing 3-phase power. So you'd have 3 hots and a ground. Kind of like how your washing machine or electric stove just kind of has, it's 220 volt, and it's got either a 3 or 4 blade, like, large plug connector, but it doesn't have, if it's got 4 blades and it's 220, then it's going to have 2 hots, a ground, and a neutral. Unless you have a house that has native 220, where you only need to send it down 1 wire, in which case it would still need to be split for most appliances, because they take it in differently, because electricity adds cumulatively. So if you put one source of 220 with another source of, or one source of 110 or 120 with another source of 110 or 120, you get 220 or 240. Now if you take 2 lines of 110 or 120 that are going to the same breaker on the same leg, or different breakers on the same leg, you'll short stuff out. It only works if it's going to different legs. So you can't make 220 out of nothing. At least not without having a problem. So that's one 15-foot cable done. What did we say this useless distance was? 4'7". Yep. 4. Awesome. 8, 12, 16. Make this one 20. Plus 3-ish. I know what I have left. Ah, great. Then I'll have another not quite 10, not quite 15 that I can make. So yeah, I will take that from the adapter. I'm bringing all the variety out today. This is yet a third kind of Edison cable, which the only real difference between this and the first one is that the strain relief is in 2 parts and has these little clips that you pull out based on your cable size, which I'll have to pull one out. And it's got a boot to keep dust, debris, and detritus. Supposed to be water to an extent, but I wouldn't trust it. Apparently the music was very soft. Or maybe it's not coming through at all. Alright. Apparently you guys aren't getting the cool jams I'm listening to. Let's see if I can fix that. Go into those. Well, I've been listening to music. Apparently you guys haven't. I'm sorry about that. Thanks, your face. I don't know what's going on with the music if you can't hear it. There we go. That's 3. Even though this one's a weird size, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Why not? Means I need to abscond with this connector. That's been on there a long time. Sticky. This can go back on the file. I guess to go back to the question that was asked before about how dangerous this is, the most dangerous part of making up your own electrical cable or extension cord by having, a tiny bit of knowledge of what you're doing is that you have a much higher chance of, when you strip the main jacket off, of ending up crimping or cutting into the shielding that's around each individual wire. If you do that, then you're going to have, if there's any sort of arcing that goes on or overloading, it can cause it to arc and create heat and melt the shielding around the other wires, and then you can get a short. That's probably the most dangerous part about people doing this who haven't been doing it for 25 years. Even for people who have been doing it for 25 years. That's why it's always good to double check. When we could find my multimeter, I could. It'll turn up eventually. This is a little short. we go. I just lost the strain relay. it. Next, let's look at this guy. 100-foot manual steel air hose reel. Well, this should take all 5 minutes. Better than the shot. Let's see if this helps things. Oh, that's a tight fitting. Nice that they paired it all up. So what's it want me to do first? Those are awesome instructions. Basically, this just shows a picture that says this is where everything goes, including the stuff that we put together for you. And here's this tiny, terrible wrench. All right, I'm not gonna mess with this tiny wrench. These are going to make me hate life way less. At least they made the hardware standard sizes. I don't know if you guys have seen the meme about doesn't matter what shop it is, you'll never be able to find the 10 millimeters. Well, they leaned into it with this one because the nuts are 10 millimeters. Oh, here I thought they were going to do something silly. Well, all right, that's kind of a failing point. So they put a flat side flange on the inside of the handle to go into the plate so that it won't like slip around, but the handle part is like the exact length for the bolt that they used. So it doesn't want to slide, doesn't want to spin super freely. It's fine, whatever. And so this guy, I need some Teflon tape for. I was surprised it didn't come with any. So, I mean, it's not the worst made thing I've gotten from Harbor Freight before. I am not a huge fan of the spinning blades of doom here. Kind of reminds me of a piece of farm equipment. But, alright, I will get my other hose out so we can stick that in that hole and wind it up. This might take me a minute. Okie dokie. Always good to get all the old Teflon tape off, if you can. Alright, so this is probably going to be the worst part of doing this, is just getting this hose in there. Yep, that's definitely the worst part. 1/8 of a turn at a time. That's annoying, because I want this to go like that to wrap up. it's all kerfuffled. There we go. I want to clamp this down. All right, and then I need a hose for that side. Yeah. There's this guy, because I have a ton of these. Just have a less nice one. Really only need a short one. I'm not going to use this. It's nice. All right, so I mean, all in all, this central pneumatic 100-foot manual steel air hose reel, wall mounted open side reel with spring loaded axle. It's really kind of hard to screw up. I'm not sure what the spring loaded axle is supposed to be accomplishing, because it's not, I guess the only thing it's doing is keeping it pressed to one side, because you can see there's the spring in here, but it's not tightening, you know, like when you're winding it, it's not fixed, it's moving with the axle. So the fact that it's part of their shtick is kind of silly. I don't know how good this fitting is going to be. I'll try it when I find one of my shorter hoses to plug into the air compressor. And this is just going to mount on the wall like that. Yeah, so I'd say it was probably worth the $30 I spent on it, because I won't end up with a mess of air hose on the floor or have to keep doing big loop coils on it whenever I need to coil it back up when I'm done using it. I'm not a big fan of how they did that. I would have put a standoff a little bit taller so that you weren't trying to like tighten that little bolt in there an 1/8 or 1/16 of a turn at a time. I also probably would have made the diameter of this a little bit bigger. And I would not have done these, like, I'm going to break your arm fins off of it. So, I mean, if you need something to hold up an air hose, this will work. If you don't have a lot of money to get a nice retractable one, this will work. I will probably next time wait till I have a spare $150 and get an auto retracting one. I hate how you always get these things, because I literally just have a drawer of this crap, because the metal is so cheap that like a scrap metaler will take it, but they don't like to, because usually you can just, you know, bend these things by hand, which makes them not super useful for applications after the original intended one. At least I didn't send it with a freaking Allen wrench. I have too many Allen wrenches as it is. Oops. All right. So, why am I here? The existential question. I'm here because I am one of the co-founders of a worker-owned or manufacturing worker-owned cooperative. We are pre-revenue. We are working on getting off the ground to start with making our first item. Our first item is a cat tree, which I can show you. It is a modular, scalable, tool-free assembly cat tree made from no formaldehyde added plywood, has no exposed plastics, has all natural and removable covers, can be assembled and rearranged over its 9 different points of attachment on the base with conveniently sized 2-foot scratcher trunks. Sorry, I don't have a third camera. The fact that I have 2 is amazing. So everything about the leaf tree is basically built off of the principle of counterweight force in physics. or cantilever force, so that the heels and the toes of the platforms engage when there's pressure put on the front side to hold it in place. I've tested this so far to 60 pounds without it breaking. 65 pounds. It bent a lot, but it didn't break. So far, I've got 10-inch sleeves, 12-inch sleeves, 2 different size tops. We're using hemp rope for the trunk, because if you're going to be the kind of person who wants to keep your pet engaged and change around, move around the leaves willy-nilly, or change them completely in their order, or perhaps even, add a hammock to it. You can easily do that. We've taken it to a couple shows. We've shown it to folks. People have been interested in it. The biggest hurdle that we have right now is getting the equipment to make it, because we want to make it here locally. We want to get as many materials locally as we can. We want to be as transparent as humanly possible with our supply chain. We want to make sure that people can feel good about what they're getting and where they're getting it from, and keeping it at an affordable cost. Everything about this is meant to be scaled to your needs and your home needs. There's going to be a ceiling jack for people who want to do particularly tall ones. Sorry, I almost hit the camera there. And there's going to be a wall mount if you want more rigidity. We've already got bridges that can go between trunks or between towers, and you could put as many bases side by side or apart from each other as you wanted, and as many or few leaves as you wanted, and multiple trunks on one base if you wanted. So I'm here if this goes anywhere and people start paying attention and tuning in, and this turns into an avenue where we can get that off the ground. That would be super cool. And this would also become a documenting of our journey and other things that we're trying to do with this company, this cooperative that we've founded called Mindful Maker Co. And be able to, keep track of our journey and make things that people want and people care about. We've already got a bunch of things we want to do and get going with. We just need that first kick to get going. For the leaf tree specifically, that would be a large bed CNC, which if I had my druthers and got the one that I wanted, it is rather expensive, but a lot more affordable than some of the other CNCs out on the market. But it is more money than I have. What we may end up doing is going with a different one that would get us started, and then we would just end up replacing it in a few years once we're going full steam ahead and expanding. But we're still figuring that out at this point. So right now we're looking for financial investors, ways of getting the money that we need to get going. Twitch seemed like a possible avenue for that, so here I am. I'm going to be doing the kind of stuff that I would normally do and trying to talk awkwardly through it. And, mostly doing woodworking, sometimes metalworking. I've got to make I don't have to, but I'm going to make a trench spade, because I have a hoop house in my backyard. I got a cheap hoop house from vivor.com earlier this spring. I'm digressing. But I got, because it was, in my price range. It was under $200 for a 10 by 20 by 7 foot tall hoop house. I would not buy it again. The tarp is already starting to tear, and they don't sell the covers separately. So I'm either going to end up getting a tarp from an actual, greenhouse manufacturer, or slowly replacing it with hard panels. I haven't decided yet, but I'm going to end up having to do something. The deer last year kept eating all my veg, so I got a hoop house because everything I did last year they would just jump over, and they didn't really care. So I need to run electricity out there so that I can put a fan, because hoop houses get hot like really quick. I did not realize just how well they retained heat. That'll be super cool in the fall and early winter where I am, that I'll be able to keep growing stuff later in the season. So that'll be neat. But right now it's basically boiling everything if I don't open the door during the day to let air naturally go. So I'm going to get a fan in there. And I also want to use that trench spade to run water out there. Right now I have a hose just running over the ground, but if I don't coil up the hose every day, it gets super hot sitting in the sun, and then I have to just water my trees until the water cools down enough that it's not boiling hot water to sapling plants. So I'm going to make that. Not sure if I'm going to make that tonight. I think the first thing I need to do is figure out if my welder works. Let's figure out if my welder works. But anyway, sorry. Kind of all over the place. So that's why I'm here. That if this goes somewhere, that I can start churning this stuff out, and the other iterations of things we want to do with this, and the other attachments to make it more broad reaching beyond just cats and small mammals, to make it more of an engaging and enrichment piece of furniture for any kind of small climbing critters, small dogs, rabbits, ferrets, mice, chinchillas, if you weirdly have decided to have a chinchilla as a pet. But you could also use it for books, or you could use a smaller version of the hammock leaf for potted plants if you wanted a vertical indoor garden. We're developing leaves for all of those, and you wouldn't be limited to just having it for one thing. If you had a small animal that didn't go super tall, you could put plants high up. I've got plans for ones that are going to have food and water bowls. So for people that have dogs and cats, or small animals that climb and big animals that don't, in the same place, that can't eat together, otherwise the big one bullies the small one, or just straight up steals their food, that they have a place safe and high, as they might in nature, depending on the animal. Even birds, making poles sticking out from it, or narrower wrapped branches that would hang out from it, that would be good for birds to perch on. And then being cognizant of how this breaks down at the end of life. We're going to be, the rope is the biggest, the most integral part, and also potentially one of the higher wear parts. Because if you have a particularly scratchy animal, so far the cats have loved the hemp. And the people that we've had testing them out also love the hemp, because it's so much softer than sisal, and also more durable. And when when cats go at it and they start scratching on it a lot, you just get little lint fluffs, kind of like if you've got a big fluffy cat when they blow their winter coat, if they get a winter coat, and you get those little tumbleweeds of fur through your house. Same basic thing with the hemp. With sisal, you end up with little bitty pokey bits of straw all over the place, and nobody wants to deal with that. But we're gonna have either an exchange or buyback or rebate way, if something happens to the trunk, that you would send us your busted one back. We'd send you a new one in some fashion. Either the cost of just like rewrapping it, the cost for materials to fix what went wrong with it, so that we could then either donate that to shelters or rescues. We really want to work with shelters and rescues to make these available in their establishments because they have the removable covers that can just be washed. I have a friend who fosters kittens, and she says about every 3 months she ends up throwing out a cat tree because it just gets ruined and she can't clean it in any way because it's made out of cardboard and particle board. So it just kind of falls apart. This is made almost entirely out of wood with metal hardware. Right now, the trunks are made out of PVC. I have to make another tool to be able to cut the trunks out of wood more reliably. Again, that's because I don't have a CNC right now. I already had to make a tool to be able to cut all the teeth in the heels and the toes so that it grips the rope well. And we are patent pending for anybody that might care about that information. Yeah, so that's the leaf tree. We just want to do something cool that people like, and that you can buy what you need and what you want, and have it grow and change and shrink through the life of your pet, or the life of your plants, or your library, or whatever. The point is that it is multifunctional, multi-purpose, and adaptable to your life. And we're hoping, our plan is for it to be as affordable as we can make it, while maintaining high quality parts and pieces that we can track where it came from. And we can tell you, like, this is exactly where this thing came from. Like our hemp right now, we get from a manufacturer in Canada, but they actually manufacture it in France, where the hemp is grown. So they are growing it in France, manufacturing it into rope in France, and then shipping it to Canada, and then they get it shipped to us. So in the realm of being, socially conscious, environmentally conscious about the impact of what we're doing, it has one of the highest impacts environmentally of the things that we get. Second only to the PVC, because PVC is kind of caustic and toxic and off gases nasty things when it gets hot, which is why I'm trying to get away from it. It was just the most apt material for the prototyping stage. Yeah, so that's me and this and why I'm here. If you're interested in seeing more, you can check our progress and our product out on leaftree.co, leaftree.co. If you're interested in finding out more about cooperatives, worker cooperatives, worker equity and democratic governance systems, my partner is currently getting a certification in cooperative business management, because we thought it would be good for one of us to really have our teeth sunk into what are cooperatives in the 21st century and where they're going. So, reach out, ask us questions. We're happy to talk about this, because cooperatives are a great way to maintain, circular economies that help the community that they're in, and are largely sustainable because they're more focused on the smaller scale of their locality and the region than they are being a global monstrosity. Granted, there are a few cooperatives that are, winning capitalism cooperatively by being massive corporations, but that's a whole different diatribe. I'm not going to get into that one tonight. All right, so Let's see if my welder wants to work. So, I have been lucky enough that most of the places that I work, I have access to a commercial quality welder. At home, I do not have access to a commercial quality welder. So, this guy does not get a whole lot of use. Oh, hey, where did I put that extension cord? Perfect time to test out my new little extension cord. Do I have wire? Hey, look, I've got wire. That's cool. That's gonna be 0.03 or it's been so long I don't even know which wire I've got in here. 0.030. Well, that's not sufficient. Power's on, that's a good sign. 3.5. Let's give it a go. Something to weld. I'm bound to have some scrap here somewhere. I get to test out my new welding helmet. So, in addition to auctions, I do love getting stuff on sale. This was an $80 helmet hood that was much cheaper because the store wasn't carrying them anymore. So my welding cape is at work. My welding jacket. So that means I get arm condom. Oh, and gloves that I never wear. I have worn these like twice ever. Alright. Let's switch that back. Yeah. Alright, I have no idea what this is going to look like on video. But, you know, let's find out. This is just a little capo thing that I made. For some reason, I think it was a prototype for something else that I never did. I'm going to see if this works. Well, it's kind of awful. Slow that wire speed down. Yeah, no. There's a feed problem in that it's not feeding correctly or evenly. Once it's sparking, because I don't have gas for that. That's got a flux wire in it, so every time it sparks, it's actually every time it makes contact with the metal, it is basically creating an arc, zapping away the filament, creating the arc, zapping away the filament. So that's what that pop 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 was, instead of it being constant like it normally would be with shielded gas. So, sorry. We will not be using that. I will keep only using it when I need to weld something back onto my car. But, nice to know it still works. So that means I will weld up the trench spade somewhere else. Maybe I'll finish it here. But, yeah, it is. I'm not going to be happy with the quality of it if I make it with this welder, and I don't have another welder. All right, well, that was a fun experiment. All right, so what am I going to do instead now? Since that's not happening. Okay. What else can I do? Yeah, I don't know. I think that about, oh, well, we can look at, I keep talking about bumping auction stuff around. Wait. Oh. This was a fun box of auction stuff that I got. So, I haven't even looked at this stuff yet. So it was an online auction. Everything was in arbitrary lots, including the milk crate was one of the lots. So this was another heavy duty cable that I think I paid $6 for this. So it's actually, looks like it's in good shape. So that's kind of exciting. And this big beefer is a 220 cable. So, or at least they claim it was 220. But all of the writing is worn away on the connector, which is always a good sign. So if this is 220, that means that these two pins are hot and this one's neutral. And if they did that, they're lunatics. Because that means they did regular 20 amp 120 sockets on something that would be having 220 come down both sides, and 220 Edison is 2 flat pins instead of 2 vertical pins. So that is, I'm hoping that's not what this person did. My plan for this was to break it and either use it if this is true 220, then I was going to switch this out to a 4-pin like I use for my lathe. It's kind of stuck right now, but so then I could plug it into what I run my lathe on, and then have 2 separate 110 circuits running. But this one too, the biggest worry about getting cables at auctions, especially in the country, is that they're going to come out and be super dry rotted or chemically affected by something, and just not be something you want to keep using, and the only thing you'll want to do is just scrap it for the copper. So that's kind of exciting. These two guys are pipe cutters. They came in a lot together. These are commercial grade pipe cutters. Ooh. So I don't know if you can see the great big old chip. Where's the light? There's the light. Great big old chip taken out of that one, which is fine because I can just get the wheel. I spent, I think, $12 on the pair, and that spins fine. So I just need a new cutting wheel for that one. That's $10 for I mean, this was probably about $50 back in the day when it was new. But this one, which is still actually out there, the rigid brand ones are quite popular still. Same company that does the orange tools at Home Depot, weirdly. Yeah, that one's still in great shape. Where's my vise? This was not auction. This came out of my grandfather's house when he passed away. Oh, I know I've got pipe here somewhere. Oh, is that one? Oh yeah. There we go. So, I'm gonna need to cut this up anyway. Do a little finagling here so I can clamp the clamp down. Well, that's not stellar. Oh, yeah, that'll work. No, I can't. So I'm trying to get this in a position where you'll easily be able to see it, and I don't have it hanging on the side of the table that you can't see. There we go. All right, so this pipe is going to be, can I move that further out? There we go. All right, so I'm going to take this pipe and I'm going to cut it down so that I can make the handle and the stem and the blade supports for the trench spade. And since I have my brand new pipe cutter, I think I'm going to make if I take the top and make it, I'm not going to do that. Like 16 inches is going to feel like a comfortable height when I get on it. And if I really wanted, I could just use my grinder. But this makes so much of a nicer edge. You'll see. A little bit too close to the table still. There we go. This is also a lot quieter. So the only real downside of these is that there are much faster means. But if you're in space without power, those much faster means aren't helpful. Oh, here it goes. See how nice and quiet that was? And look how clean that edge is. There's a little bit of a burr on the inside. So then you just take a deburring tool and scrape it out. But this is not sharp at all. unlike the jagged edge you would get from using a grinder. And same with this one. That is a $6, $120 tool, which is super exciting. This is a lot of stuff I got at the same auction. Senko finish nailer, 18 gauge finish nails. This is a metal strap crimper or bale crimper. If you've got if you ever see those pallets of stuff that have the metal strap going around that seems like it's going to cut your finger off, the metal crimps that join the two ends together were done with a tool like this one. I did not need it, but what I wanted from this lot was the confined space adjustable wrench, which is great for air fittings and nuts hidden in really annoying places on cars, or bolts. PVC cutters are always useful. And this is like, I mean, talk about retro, man. You can't get these in metal anymore. And it just ratchets closed to cut through plastic pipe. I love that. This is a wrench used for like sink fittings. I didn't really need that one, but it was in the same lot. All of this, so the two air guns came in a lot, the two pipe cutters came in a lot, and all of the rest of this stuff came in a lot. This is another Senko nailer with no information on it, but no nails left in it. That looks like, what style head does that use? So I'm going to guess that this is a 22-degree Senko finish nailer that takes the D style nail heads. We'll see when I get this work. Oh, yeah, SFNI. Yeah, that's one of their finish nailers. Meant for like molding and stuff around houses. Super useful. Like when this was new, about $270. This was about $150 to $180 when it was new. Both of these together cost me almost nothing. It was $10 for the pair. This is great. This is a pipe wrench. So you put the bike chain in there, and then you can tighten or loosen stuff while it's locked in there. Always useful. It came with two. Same tool, slightly different manufacturer. I like the Reed one better. And three of these guys are actually the exact same thing as this guy, just smaller. And these are meant for copper tube and EMT, electromechanical tubing, the type of conduit that you see in buildings, commercial buildings, schools. Anytime you see metal that's running along a wall that goes to an outlet, it's 99% of the time EMT. This one's a little jank, but the blade's good. This one probably just needs cleaning up. It's turning, but it's super stiff. But this one works great. These are about $10-15 each. They're not that much. And these are, I'm not like trying to resell this stuff. This is just stuff for me because I need stuff. But, you know, if you're watching your local auctions, you can find stuff like that if you're looking for tools. It's a great place to get tools. As long as you're, you know, do your homework first. Especially a lot of auctions will put their catalogs online, so you can actually see what they're selling ahead of time, and they'll have a preview day so you can actually come and look at it, and you could write down the model numbers of everything. Let me switch back so you're not just looking at my hands, you're looking at my ugly mug. But a lot of them will put you can find out what the things are, and you can go back home and look them up online at your leisure to find out if it's a good brand, if they have a good warranty, if they have a good track record, anything like that. Same thing with a lot of the home goods stuff. I mean, if you need a table, chairs, file cabinets, bed set, oftentimes you can get that stuff at a steal at auctions, as long as you're not going to an auction house that specializes in high-end stuff. You'll never walk out of there with a good price, or what people like me might consider to be a good price, because you're going to be paying antique dealer prices at places like that, because they're selling stuff of a very specific caliber that is too rich for my blood. I don't go to those auctions. I will sometimes go for the people watching, because the people watching is great. People watching at regular auctions is also great. The breadth and width of people that go to those things around, where I am, we have a lot of Mennonites and some Amish, and then your general, normal folk, your folk that you expect to see when people say folk a lot, and y'all. The whole gamut. And then you get the dealers and like the flea market people that are going for like a really big deal, so they can resell it in their junk stall at the flea markets. You get to a point where you can start to spot them. It's kind of fun playing. Are they outfitting their vacation home or the regular home, or are they looking to flip this really fast? And there's been stuff that I have seen go at auction, and then 2 days after the auction, it's on Facebook Marketplace for 10 times as much as they bought it at auction. And, no shame on the hustle, but I don't do that. I go to auctions for stuff that I need, or things that I know other people can use. I think I've probably gotten about 300 skeins of yarn. I have several people in my life who are either avid or hobby knitters and crocheters, and yarn is a hobby that has a very low barrier to entry and a very high upkeep, unless you're constantly watching the sales. So I have given away a lot of yarn as gifts in the last few years, which I've gotten a few things back made from that yarn, which is super cool. And other people out there have, gotten tons of stuff made from that yarn. And some of that yarn that the people I gave it to didn't want, they gave it to their library to give to other people, so that, people who can't afford yarn could get yarn. That was a super cool thing that I know somebody did. But yeah, I get kid stuff, toys, art supplies. Great. Auctions can be great for art supplies if they're, slightly used. Usually if they're like down to the nibs, the auctioneers won't sell that stuff because it's basically garbage. Yeah. So I love me some auctions and some sales, because I don't like seeing things go in landfill, and I'm broke. So not really broke, but I'm necessarily frugal, because life is expensive. Yeah. So I think that's a good place. So thanks for watching. Do stuff, make things. Next time I'll try and have the music thing sorted so you're not sitting there quietly listening to me mumble and ramble. And maybe I'll find a way to filter out the fan that I had running for the first part of the stream, so that I'm not dying and having sweat pouring off of me while I'm here doing stuff, getting warmer by the moment. Yeah, it's going to be a fun learning experience. Keep track, because it's probably just going to keep being a train wreck. All right. Thank you all who tuned in. Enjoy the rest of your night.